Megaherzzz. You're listening to Megaherzzz on 4ZZZ.
Welcome to Megaherzzz. Before we get on with the show, I would like to acknowledge that we are broadcasting from the stolen lands of the Turrbal and Yagara people. Sovereignty over this land was never ceded, always was, always will be Aboriginal land, and we here at Megaherzzz stand in solidarity in the fight for justice. We have made a commitment on on Megaherzzz to report on the femicide happening in Australia. So please, if this is something that will disturb or trigger you, tune out for the next 5 or so minutes. Practice self-care. Look after yourself because it's very intense stuff. Fortunately, in the last week, there have been it's really the bare minimum, isn't it? But there have been no women killed in Australia, but two young boys have lost their life due to violence. And I think that it's important that we discuss this because it's violence committed against people and 2 beautiful young lives taken. And I think that it is still a feminist issue because, violence that is perpetrated against women gets perpetrated against men as well, So I would just like to say the names of Dao Akweng and Chol Achik, 2 young men who lost their lives last week. And those young men didn't deserve to die. They had bright futures ahead of them. Their lives are important. So think about them today. In some slightly better news, Sharelle Moody has made a post this week that she just purchased her first home, but it's not being used for her. It's being used for domestic violence victims. And she has called it Stacy's Sanctuary. Big trigger warning on this, but she called it Stacy's Sanctuary because her stepfather in 1990 kidnapped and murdered Stacy and Tracy, and that is part of what fuels Sharelle Moody to do the work that she does. But it's a beautiful namesake for Sharelle Moody to make this sanctuary for women fleeing domestic violence. But she has made a call out to get some support to build this house up and to make it livable for women in need. So if you have funds, if you have access to support that, it would be a really fantastic cause. This will be a free place for women who are in really dire need to go and get support. So we use Sharelle Moody as our source every week, and I just really suggest if you can help support that. But also I wanted to bring light to another call out that I saw through EMEA, Keeping Brisbane Alive. A mother and a woman in the Gold Coast has tragically passed away, and she has left behind 2 young daughters, one in high school and one at university, and these young women and their dad's also in hospital, and he's in a really bad state. So these young women are looking at a very difficult circumstance, and financially they're really struggling. So there's a GoFundMe up online. If you go to Keeping Brisbane Alive, there's a link there. So just rallying community is a really important thing. These young women are facing the most horrible thing that can happen. And yeah, so if you have the funds to support a local family in a really hard time, please go do so. That's on Keeping Brisbane Alive's site. Thanks for listening. And also, if you need support, sorry guys, DV Connect hotline. The number is 1-800-RESPECT, 1-800-737-732. That's DV Connect, 1-800-737-732. If you need support, please call that number. I decided that I would do a little bit of research, but I wanted to know a little bit more about the riots happening in Nepal. So I've done a quick bit of research on that, and I really suggest that you do your own research because it's very important stuff that's happening. But just as a small synopsis, if you haven't been on top of this news, which, the media does not always report well on these kinds of things, or they're quite biased, because I've seen a lot of it was hard looking just then because a lot of them were talking about violence, which there was violence, of course, but not talking about the central issue as to why people were so infuriated and are having to stand up against this regime. So if you haven't heard much, there are and have been mass protests happening in Nepal. Young people have burnt down the parliament and the former prime minister's house, and there have been quite a few deaths on the streets while the protesting was happening. But it all started, a catalyst for the starting of it was a social media ban, and that violent riots upended the country earlier this week, prompting Prime Minister Khadga Prasad Sharma Oli to resign on Tuesday and flee his official residence. So they put that social media ban up, and then the protests began. And they did take him back down, but the protests continue because that was just a small catalyst for big riots. So while the government said it was about cracking down on cybercrime and spreading hatred, the social media ban, it has been widely criticised as a tool for censorship and punishing opponents who voice their protests online. And some of the reporting said that Nepali youth said development has not been happening in the country because these politicians are keeping all the money in their pockets, and this is affecting our future. On top of this, there has been widespread criticism over the government's failure to pursue some major corruption cases, and protesters also say the government has failed to create more economic opportunities for young people. Nepal's youth unemployment rate in Nepal was 20% last year, according to the World Bank. So these protests are being referred to as Gen Z protests because majority of the people out on the streets are 20-year-olds and obviously fed up by really bad living conditions. And it's also talking a lot about greed and a massive wealth disparity in the country that's leading to a lot of poverty that is greedy. But what you probably have heard is that the new interim prime minister was elected through a Discord server, which is the most Gen Z thing I've ever heard, but she seems like a badass. She's Sushila Kaki, a 73-year-old woman. She is a Nepalese jurist, author and politician who is serving as the current interim Prime Minister of Nepal since 12th of September 2025, following the Gen Z protests in the country. The first woman to head the government of Nepal as Prime Minister. She previously served as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Nepal from 11th of July 2016 to 6th of June 2017, and was also the first woman in that role. So I wanted to talk about this today, and I apologise for my lack of articulation, but I think it's really important to see that young people have rapidly toppled this regime that has been exploitative of them, and young people are taking power into their own hands. And it seems like they have been incredibly intelligent and picked somebody who is actually capable and more fit for that role. So good on those brave people out there protesting and taking change into their own hands. This was obviously a very quick and not well-articulated roundup of that information. So I really suggest that you go and do your own research and educate yourself on it. But yeah, keep an eye on what's happening over there. Call out injustice that you see around you. And it's really, really important stuff and very brave people.
Isn't that what feminism is about?